Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
Timing is Everything by Demiam. A girl falls from the sky on the Thousand Sunny and claims to be the daughter of two of the crew members from the future. Now they have to find out how to help her get back home and cope with the changes she's causing. A storm is quickly approaching them, and will they be able to survive, or will her actions destroy them? I don't own anything. Member list: Taz Peterson, Yankoro, Leilani Morris Warlord, Garrick Russell Warlord, Black Money Young Lion Warlord.
Chapter 1 Mysterious Girl. Through her time in the Straw Hat crew, there were a few things that Nico Robin had come to love and appreciate. The loyalty and the bonds that she had formed with her nakama, their disregard for her dark past, their captain willingness to forgive and protect each and every one of them without hesitation, their wild and exciting adventures that easily seemed to belong to the pages of adventure books, even bordering romance if she could allow herself to add a few details between herself and an oblivious straw hat wearing young man. But there were two things that she came to cherish the most while on that ship: her captain's infectious smile and the rare calm uneventful moments where she could just read in peace. As she closes her eyes, Robin can't help but think about how much she missed her nakama and their ship, Thousand Sunny, during the 2 years they spent training. Looking from her flower bed to the sky, she could only see clear blue skies as far as the eye could see. With a calm smile, she turned to the main deck where she could see Zoro sleeping while leaning against the foremast, Frankie at the helm, and Luffy playing with Usopp and Chopper laughing loudly at one of Usopp's stories from what she could tell. While letting out a content sigh, she approached the railing to watch them better as they started some sort of game, her smile growing almost imperceptibly as she observed them, her soft gaze following her captain as he ran across the deck. It doesn't matter how much time passes, Luffy is still Luffy, thought the raven-haired woman as the focus of her gaze turned to look at her and gave her a smile and a wave as he called her name. Smiling, she responded with a small wave as she felt her heart skip a beat. Turning to look at the side of the ship, she could only revel in this forbidden feeling which she could never reveal to him, and she doubted that such an innocent and naive person that was Luffy could even understand how she felt towards him or what she desired of him. But that did not stop the hopeful and foolish part of her heart that she had hidden from the world long ago of hoping. As the voices of their navigator and cook approached the deck, she closed her eyes and simply enjoyed the wind as it passed by her, brushing her hair as if invisible fingers playing with it. Such a calm and nice feeling, and with the voice of her captain so close by, she couldn't help but have certain thoughts regarding whose those fingers should be. As her imagination began to work, she felt a sudden jolt snap her off her daydream. She looked around and found nothing out of the ordinary. The only thing different was that now she could feel some kind of pull towards a particular direction of the sea. Staring at that direction, she could almost hear a calling of some kind telling her that she should. No, she must go there, decided the older woman when she noticed the silence on the deck. Peering at it, she could see Luffy walking calmly towards the helm where Nami was talking to Frankie. Wasting no time, she quickly ran towards it too, while passing a confused Usopp asking a much more confused Chopper. If she had looked carefully, she would have seen Zoro's slightly open eye and Brook looking from his guitar to his young friend. "Frankie, let's go there," said Luffy, pointing to the direction Nico Robin felt the pull. The cyborg looked confused by Luffy's orders but shrugged, and as he was about to change course, Nami spoke. "What are talking about, Luffy? There's nothing there," said the orange-haired girl, raising her arm. "The log pose doesn't point to that direction. None of the needles do," explained Nami, showing the log pose, looking confused at her captain's behavior. "Nah, there's something there," said the black-haired teen with a smile as he began to move towards his spot on the lion's head. As his navigator was about to reply, he said, "I can feel it calling to me. We are going there, and that's final," explained Straw Hat Luffy as he heard his navigator sigh behind his back. She knew she couldn't change his mind. "Fine," conceded Nami as Frankie changed course. Robin and Sanji approached the group as they heard their captain shout, "Yosh, let's follow the mysterious feeling. She. Baka, captain, following things only he feels, whenever he feels like it," grumbled a frustrated Nami while Sanji tried to placate his dear Nami Swan, as the rest of the crew returned to their own business, passing the order as just another selfish demand from their stupid captain. But as Robin began to walk away, she could swear she heard him whisper, "I'm not the only one that feels it." She could almost feel the smile on the whisper, but he never turned his back nor moved as they sailed forth towards something that called for her and made her feel anxious. Lightning and thunder surrounded the Straw Hat ship as it sailed through the storm. Nami could be seen barking orders, trying to save the ship and its crew. She didn't understand how this happened. The sky had been clear, no signs of even rain for days, when suddenly out of nowhere storm clouds gathered around the ship and began this deafening inferno. Luffy's excited cries could be heard as he shouted for them to remain on the storm while Nami said they should get out of it. "Forward. We are almost there," screamed the young man as he remained on his spot with a giant grin. "What are talking about? There's nothing ahead of us, just more storm," screamed Nami as she tried to find an exit from the storm. Robin remained silent beside Nami. Since the start of the storm she hadn't moved. She could feel it, the pull getting stronger, throbbing almost like an enormous heartbeat. All sounds around her were drowned by the loud heartbeat that pounded in her ears. She saw her friend ask her something beside her, but the pull was almost overwhelming now. "It's close. We're almost there," said the woman in a trance, not even noticing she voiced her thoughts to her friend, that was about to ask what she meant when an array of deafening thunder and lightning passed close to the sunny, drowning her voice as well as the others. As she screamed, she failed to notice the small circle in the clouds above them, that shined with a light so bright that blinded them. When they opened their eyes, the Straw Hat crew saw that the storm was calming down and receding towards the horizon. All was quiet for a few moments. "Okay. What just happened?" asked the crew's sharpshooter to his nakama. Most simply shrugged in response until they heard a startled yelp coming from Chopper that hid behind the foremast, the wrong way, gaining the crew's attention. "What's wrong?" asked Usopp to his furry friend that simply pointed to the middle of the deck where the form of an unconscious person rested on the floor. As the crew began to gather around their uninvited guest, Robin had to ask herself, "Was that the person calling to me?" wondered the woman as she took in the stranger's features. It was a young girl. She couldn't be older than 15, thought Robin. Slender with an athletic build to her body, probably taller than most girls her age, she guessed. She wore shorts that hugged her thighs, a light purple vest over a white top that seemed to have rips exposing her belly, wearing a purple cowboy hat, fingerless gloves and a headband tied to her left arm. There were also a katana and a tanto with her. Once it became clear she wasn't going to wake up, Chopper examined her and said that she seemed okay, just asleep. She had no apparent injuries or anything he could see, which generated more questions as to how she appeared there and where had she come from. "I think it's better to let her rest in the sick bay for now," said the Straw Hat's furry doctor as he prepared to change to Heavy Point to carry his latest patient before Luffy beat him to it and carried the young girl in his arms. His silence made most forget he was even there. As they left the deck, Luffy's quiet behavior generated even more questions that were left unanswered as he carried the young girl while the rest of the crew ever they were doing before the storm. Accompanying Luffy and Chopper were a nervous Nami that was certain that this girl was responsible for the previous storm and wanted to keep an eye on her. With similar thoughts, Robin kept up with them, but she also desired to know her relation to this girl, the storm, that strange pull, and Luffy, how it was all connected. Once on the sick bay, Luffy rested the unconscious girl on the bed and simply stared at the girl, his hand on his chin as he appeared to analyze her while his nakama observed his curious behavior. Robin could see that he was curious about the girl himself, but after a few moments he seemed to give up on figuring anything out, as he complained of a headache, much to her amusement and her female friend's annoyance. While Luffy approached Chopper complaining of his headache, asking for medicine, Nami decided to voice her thoughts. "What is she?" As her friends turned to look at her, she elaborated, "I mean, she obviously had something to do with the storm, right? So why is she asleep and how did she appear on our deck? And that blinding light?" Nami said, looking to her female nakama looking for support and help with her theories. "So she came from the mysterious storm?" asked Luffy with so much confusion that they could swear that it was like he wasn't on the deck during the storm with them. "Yes, that is what Nami-san is saying," confirmed Nico Robin in the tone she always used when explaining something to Luffy. This earned her a pensive look from him. "So she's a mysterious girl," concluded Luffy with his famous smile and small laugh. Nami and Chopper groaned at their captain's thought process while Robin suppressed another amused giggle at his antics. While he hovered near the mysterious girl, the girls and doctor argued. "What should we do about her?" asked Copper to the two women. I don't know," began Nami, looking in the eye of her furry nakama. "I guess we don't have a choice but to wait for her to wake up, huh?" she said. Nodding their heads in agreement, they turned to see Luffy poking the sleeping girl, calling for the mysterious girl to wake up and play with him until Nami hit him and screamed about taking things seriously before sighing and looking at her log pose and its needles. With another sigh, she turned to her more serious friends and said, "I have to tell Frankie to change the course again. Do you mind keeping an eye on her?" asked the orange-haired beauty. "No problem," replied a saluting Chopper with a nodding Robin before Nami left the room, sparing a quick glance to their sleeping passenger. For the next minutes, Chopper began reading his medical books with the occasional glance to his patient. Luffy alternated between keep staring at the girl and a bored look when she remained asleep despite his best efforts, and Robin watched his actions and the girl with some interest because whenever he stopped and stayed quiet on his stool with his back turned to her, she felt as if he was actually thinking. Soon Sanji's yells signaling lunch caught their attention, and Luffy seemed to hesitate only a second, glancing at the girl, before running towards the kitchen yelling about lunch. After some convincing and a growling stomach, Robin convinced Chopper to go have lunch while she stood guard at the sick bay. Once alone with the young girl, she stood close to the bed and observed her with a more critical eye. The girl had messy black hair at shoulder length, long legs, Quite the nice bust size for her age, probably C-cup she guessed. She also has a thin and defined nose on her face. Robin knew this girl was pretty, maybe even a real beauty, given some time. Thought her as her hand unconsciously reached the girl face and brushed a few stray strands of hair from her eyes. With a smile that she could feel growing on her features, she watched as the girl seemed to smile in her sleep, as if that simple act swatted away all fears and anxiety the girl felt and entered in a more peaceful slumber. Nico Robin herself didn't know why she had done that, but now she was sure this girl was connected to the strange pull that she felt, because even though it was much weaker, she could now feel some sort of connection between her and this girl. And yet she could not tell what those warm feelings that were growing inside her were. As she remained sat on the bed, trying to figure out what those feelings were, she didn't heard the door open and close, but as she continued to run her fingers through the girl's dark hair, humming to herself an image of her mother in O'Hara, Nico Olivia played in her mind, and she couldn't stop her sad smile as she continued to watch this girl's peaceful expression. After a few moments, the sound of a familiar laugh brought her back to the present, and right beside her stood a grinning Luffy. How she didn't heard him until now was the question on her mind as she saw him get closer to them and brushed his own fingers to the girl's forehead with a smile that showed something she never saw before, but it was gone as soon as it appeared before his smile settled in his usual grin. "She's a mysterious girl, right?" said Luffy, still grinning to Robin. She was surprised by the question, but before she could ask what he meant, he turned from her to Chopper's desk and stood, then brought a plate of food and water to her. "Lunch," said Luffy. "It's very yummy." "Thank you, Luffy," responded Robin as she began to eat while watching the girl. For a few minutes neither said nothing. Luffy kept looking between the girl and Robin's food, and Robin was in her own thoughts again. Once she finished her meal, she heard Usopp call Luffy to play another game. As he left, he said a quick bye to Robin before running out the room. Robin sighed as she continued to think about the mysterious girl, as Luffy so eloquently called her. "Mysterious girl indeed," said the woman with a small chuckle before the crew's doctor returned and told her he would continue to watch her and that she should rest, and that Sanji had a dessert prepared in the kitchen for her and Nami. "Thank you, Chopper-san," replied her with a smile before going for the door, sparing a glance to the unconscious girl. "I can see an island," screamed Usopp from the crow's nest, much to the happiness of a bored-looking Luffy. "Yosh, adventure," yelled the young man as he jumped to his seat on the lion's head for a better view. Looking at the log post, then the skies and sails, satisfied, the navigator said, "It should take us only half an hour to reach it, to no one in particular." "Okay, everyone, we'll meet back here in an hour, okay?" asked Nami as Luffy simply jumped out the ship yelling about adventure. "Wait, Luffy," screamed the orange-haired woman in frustration while the others simply sighed. "I'll catch him," said Zoro in bored tone before jumping down and start running in the wrong direction. "It's the other way," screamed Nami, Usopp, Chopper and Sanji at the same time before Nami sighed again. "Baka." "Don't worry, Nami Swan. I'll take care of them," shouted Sanji as he jumped down. "It's this way, Marimo," he shouted once again to his nakama. "Remember to buy the supplies," yelled the navigator as they continued to run after their captain. With them gone, she turned to the rest of the crew and decided who guarded the ship. Once that was settled, each went their way. On the Thousand Sunny, a warm breeze was blowing as the figure of a woman could be seen reading a book on the deck. The loud sound of a cannon shot disturbed her reading as she quickly got up before falling to the grassy floor. As she tried to get out of the net, she could feel her strength quickly leaving her. "What was that?" screamed a Chopper in his heavy point form, searching for the source of the sound until his eyes landed on the net and the woman trapped underneath it. "Robin," yelled the concerned doctor as he ran towards her. "Cho-op PPER. Don't," stammered the woman as she saw him approaching her. As soon as his hands touched the net, he let out a groan as he reverted to his usual form and fell, his face close to Kairoseki. But her warning came too late. Soon they could hear a loud and obnoxious laugh at the side of their ship as another ship docked at their side. Men soon landed on the deck of Sunny. The man laughing walked towards them with an arrogant smile. "Nico Robin, the devil child," said the disgusting man with a sick smile. "And a raccoon?" asked him, unsure of the creature he was seeing. Said creature tried to glare and shout at the man but had no strength and could only huff in indignation. "Kairoseki. Always useful against you Akuma no Mi users," explained the man as he crouched in front of the woman, mocking her as she kept glaring at him. He had a short, dirty bear with a large mustache. His clothes were just a simple white shirt with tan pants with a belt that had a sword and weapon attached to it. On his shoulder rested a coat and a big hat on his hands. "Without your abilities, all users are nothing," said the arrogant male with a growing smirk before standing up and putting his hat back. "Who are you?" she asked as she refused to show weakness. "We," asked the man as he pointed to himself and his crew. "We're just a couple of simple bounty hunters," said the man, chuckling as his crew began to laugh in the background. "You're more than a couple bounty hunters," stated the woman as she counted the number of enemies. "At least 15 feet, thought Robin as she scanned the deck. "I guess you're right," his smile growing more sinister. "We are more like a group of bounty hunters that like to catch users." With a kairoseki net and handcuff is so easy to capture them. Just look at yourself, and it's so easy we don't even need to leave this place. You pirates always end up here one way or another," explained the bearded man, satisfied with himself. While the man continued with his monologue, a skeletal figure could be seen peeking through a half-open door. "Bounty hunters with kairoseki," thought the once normal man. "What can I do? What can I do?" repeated him in mild panic. "What if I use a surprise attack? Bust the door open and fight? No, they would catch me with a net and then I would be dead," thought the man with horror in his bony face. "Would I?" wondered him, until the sound of an evil laughter caught his attention. "I could cut the net, perhaps," wondered the man in a low voice. "But what if a part of it touches me?" His horror soon began to rise again. As he heard the bounty hunter's captain shout orders to his crew, the living skeleton made his decision. "No time to think about it," he said as he slowly approached the door, preparing to open it. "Okay. 3, 2, 0. The skeleton was suddenly dragged inside the ship, no one hearing his muffled cries. As the handcuffs made of kairoseki restrained the Straw Hat Pirates' crew members, the bounty hunter yelled, "Let's go. I want to finish this as soon as possible, so me and Ms. Nico Robin can spend some quality time," said the man, cupping the woman's face with a lecherous look. While the rest of his crew was retrieving the net and preparing to build a trap for the rest of the Straw Hat Pirates, they heard a cannon shot, followed by another and another. Soon almost all of those on the deck of the Thousand Sunny were caught inside kairoseki nets. "What the hell is going on?" yelled the captain as he turned to look at his ship until music began to play and he lost himself in it. He awoke when he heard the screams of his crew that now were on the floor. "What is happening?" he asked, looking everywhere, searching for the one responsible, while Robin had a small knowing smile. "Next time you really should leave more than a couple of weak guys guarding the ship," spoke a figure on the railing of his ship. He turned and saw a young girl sitting there with her legs crossed and a mocking smile. She descended to the deck of the Thousand Sunny with surprising grace as she calmly walked towards him. "If I were you, I would just give up," said the mysterious girl in a calm voice. This only infuriated the captain. His group of bounty hunters had caught several users before, had fought some of them using their kairoseki bullets, and he had killed his fair share of bastards, and yet this nameless girl comes and ruins it. "You'll pay for it," screamed the man as he charged at her with his blade. "Yeah, thought as much," said her in bored tone as she ducked a slash that would have decapitated her. But he didn't give up and aimed for her legs. She jumped away from him, then closed her eyes and yawed as she sidestepped out of harm's way. With each swing she dodged or sidestepped out of the way as if she already knew what he would do. Nico Robin watched this show with fascination. The mysterious girl kept dodging the man's attacks as if they were nothing, and apparently she was helping them. Slowly she walked towards Chopper and asked, "Are you okay?" "Yeah," answered the reindeer while huffing. "How is she doing that?" asked him. Before she could answer, she heard a shot and something fly by her head. Turning, she saw the man on the floor away from the girl, sweating and out of breath with his gun pointed in her direction. "Robin." She barely heard her furry friends cry, and when she recovered from the shock she saw that Nami, Usopp and Frankie were boarding the ship with Brooke calling for them. The mysterious girl remained still as the bounty hunter got back on his feet, panting. He. "What happened? Afraid to get hurt?" mocked the tired man as he was quickly becoming more outnumbered. You, stammered the young girl. "You dare hurt my mother," she screamed as she charged at him, dodging his desperate attack and countered it with her own. A vicious uppercut followed by a roundhouse kick, sending him sprawling on the floor at Robin's feet. No one moved, stunned by the girl's statement. Nobody knew what to say until Nami began. What did she just say?" The girl walked towards them with smile, opened her mouth, and before she could speak the bounty hunter grabbed Robin with his blade on her neck. "Nobody moves or she dies," said the man with a busted lip. As he walked away from the group and towards the island, he heard a shout, "Take your hands off Robin Schwan." Turning around, he felt his blade being swatted away, a shoe in his face, then a hard fist before blacking out. While Sanji yelled at Zoro for putting Robin Schwan in danger by using his swords, and Zoro told him he was the idiot by screaming at the guy, Luffy helped Robin get up, being careful not to touch the handcuffs. As the three men walked on the deck, they saw the mysterious girl ran towards Robin and hugged her. "Thank God you're safe, mother," said the girl, shocking the three and confusing all aboard once again. "What do you?" began Nami while approaching the girl once more before she spoke again. "Good thing Dad saved you, right?" said the girl with much enthusiasm and a big smile missing the surprised face of said woman. "Dad," thought all of the crew as they turned to look at their cook, swordsman and captain. While this chapter is small, it's just the start. Chapter 2: Mysterious Past, or Future. They couldn't believe the scene before them. They simply couldn't find their voices in the face of such a spectacle. Slowly closing his mouth, Usopp gulped loudly. He continued to stare in disbelief at what he was seeing. Like many of his nakama, almost all of them were huddled close to him and as far away from it as possible. All of them watched the events unfolding before them with mixed feelings that ranged from shock, curiosity, some concern, and even disgust. The scene that was the focus of the Straw Hat Pirates' attention was of their captain eating in a way that they believed only he could do it, but that was not what had surprised them. No, what shocked and even scared them was the girl sitting beside him eating as savagely as him. It seemed that since they had seated, they started a eating competition in which they were the only participants, fighting for food against each other and more than once glaring at each other when one was faster than the other. "Where is all that going?" asked Usopp to his friends without taking his eyes of the two hungry creatures, because he was unsure that what he was seeing could be described as human behavior. Suddenly both the captain and the girl grabbed the same piece of meat at opposite ends. They stopped and glared at each other, their audience holding their collective breath as they began to pull in opposite directions. The captain's face mirrored his contestant for the meaty treat as he began to frown in concentration. With the sound of bones slowly breaking and the annoyed groans from both of them as they kept competing for the single piece of meat, the crew kept their eyes on the piece of meat to see who would win. The mysterious girl seemed to be slowly but steadily losing ground from what the Straw Hat Pirates could see. So focused were they on this development that almost none of them saw her slowly reach behind her and only heard their captain yell as his fist hit him in the face. Confused, they saw her quickly eat her prize with a smug expression while Luffy glanced at the piece on his hands. "Hey, you cheated!" yelled the angry young man while pointing at the girl. The crew was confused until they saw that what he had in his hand was just a small part of the bone that had clearly been cut, but the girl simply shrugged with an innocent smile and seemed to become more satisfied with herself before continuing to eat. A pouting Luffy soon followed her example. "I can't believe in what my eyes are seeing," said Brook, "but I don't have eyes anymore." "Yo-ho-ho-ho," joked the moving skeleton. Nami and Usopp sighed at their Nakama's poor sense of humor while Robin giggled a little. After a few more possibly traumatizing minutes, both were finished. The mysterious girl used a napkin, that no one knew where she got it from, and cleaned her mouth. She would have looked like an elegant lady that had just finished her meal, if not for the mountains of food in front of her and a very fat Luffy patting his belly. As the rest of the crew looked at their plates of food, not sure if they could stomach anything at the moment, Nami caught herself wondering, how the hell did things end up like this, while she tried to finish her meal. Flashback, "There, much better," said a young girl with a smile to a stunned Robin on the ship's deck as the handcuffs fell to the ground. The crew's gaze alternated between the girl and Robin and her three possible dads. Luffy had his arms crossed and his head cocked to the side as he looked at the mysterious girl and his Nakama, clearly confused about what was happening. Zoro took another shaking step back, shock written all over his face as his eye remained glued to the girl, sweat drenching his clothes as he fought to breathe, his mind working a mile a minute trying to understand what she meant. "Is she talking about me?" he thought, slowly entering a spiral of confusion and unsure thoughts. Sanji seemed to be the calmest of the trio, disturbingly calm even as he remained quiet with his head bowed, shaking almost imperceptibly. Robin drowned out the sound of the young girl's voice as she talked with her while she watched the three possible fathers of the girl and their reactions, even if she herself was having a hard time understanding why she called her mother, regardless of the strange feelings that were starting to grow inside her. She watched Luffy continue to look around as if the answer was on any of them or written somewhere nearby. Zoro was slowly retreating from what she was not sure. "The situation or her and the girl?" asked Robin on her mind with mild concern for his state of mind. Sanji stood motionless, almost as if life had been sucked out of him. And she could understand why. After all, to a man so in love with all women, the idea of a daughter must be devastating. He began to slowly walk forward. Raising an eyebrow, Robin watched as his steps increased in speed quickly and faster than she could understand what was happening. She found herself in a bone-crushing hug with her daughter. "My beautiful daughter," screamed the crying cook with a smile as he lifted both mother and daughter, spinning them while laughing like madman. "What?" yelled a surprised Nami and Usopp as they watched the weird display of affection. As they were released from the crushing hug, the girl seemed to be the one confused now as she looked at the blonde man. "What do you mean she's your daughter?" asked Usopp as the crew approached them just as curious. Sanji chuckled. "Don't you see?" asked him, eyeing his friends with a smug expression. "The way she appeared, her skills, her mother being Robin Schwan. There's only one explanation," said the blonde cook as he took a drag from his cigarette, building up suspense with his silence. "She's an angel created by our love in heaven that was sent here to bless our love," exclaimed the cook with stars on his eyes and an unsettling smile to his Nakama. Everyone face faulted and screamed, "That doesn't make any sense," then looked incredulously at the man as he shouted to the skies above, thanking God. "And pretty soon Nami Swans and my daughter will come as well," said Sanji with his mind clearly on somewhere else. If his dreamy gaze was anything to go by, completely oblivious to the annoyed looks of disbelief he was being subjected to and commentaries from his Nakama regarding his sanity. While massaging the bridge of her nose and sighing in annoyance, Nami smacked him, and then again, and then once more, and maybe one more time just to make sure. "Are you awake now?" asked the navigator in an all too calm voice and a smile that promised much more pain if not given the right answer, which earned a vigorous nod from the blonde man, fearing for his life. Laughter could be heard now that the problem with the lovesick cook had been handled. The mysterious girl along with Luffy were laughing so hard that they were almost rolling on the floor. Once they stopped and noticed the stairs, a cough, courtesy of the girl, broke the silence. "Shouldn't we take care of them?" said the young girl, pointing to the many unconscious bounty hunters tied on the nets, all of them mysteriously sporting a big bump on their foreheads touching the deck. Right," said the orange-haired woman as she barked orders to throw them back on their own ship and tie them to the mast and so on, the captain being tied to the helm. "What are you doing?" asked the navigator as she saw their mysterious guest piling the kairoseki nets on the deck of the Thousand Sunny. She turned to the older woman and simply replied, "They could be useful in the future." Seeing Nami's raised eyebrow, she continued, "You know, like to trap our enemies or make sure they don't escape or something. If nothing else, they are expensive, so they could fetch a good price." At the mention of money, Nami's attitude changed completely. Giving a thumbs up to the girl and her idea, she told the others to take all the treasure they could find from the ship along with any equipment with kairoseki. Once that was finished, using one of FR put the boat in a particular direction that supposedly would lead to a marine base, they watched the ship sail away for a moment. "Okay, now that's over," began Nami, ending the silence that surrounded the Straw Hat Pirates. "Who are you and why did you call Robin mother?" asked her, turning to the mysterious girl, that had a surprised look on her face at the question. "Yeah, and why did you say Sanji was your father? That's not even possible," added Usopp, closing in on the girl, trying to look serious and intimidating. Before Sanji could say something stupid again, Fraki spoke first. "Indeed, how old are? 14 or 16, maybe. There's no way that Sanji is your father, he's not old enough," concluded the cyborg, earning nods of agreement from the crew's sharpshooter, doctor and navigator. "Robin, on the other hand, she certainly is ol. OOOWWW, suddenly screamed the gigantic man, clutching his head, and then tried to reach for his private parts while screaming in agony, every man flinching in sympathy, covering their own private parts. "What were you saying?" asked a smiling Robin in a sickening sweet voice with her arm crossed over her chest. "Huh?" insisted the dangerous woman as she began to emit an aura that would make even a Kainu cower in fear, standing close to the form of a sobbing cyborg. No one spoke for some time. Usopp was hugging Chopper as if he was his only protection from this dangerous monster before him, and Chopper was petrified before such sight. Zoro was sweating once more, reminding himself to refrain from ever be on the path of Robin's wrath while pitying his poor nakama. Sanji was trying to light a cigarette, but his shaking hands were making that quite a difficult task. Memories best left forgotten suddenly appearing in his mind's eye. Brook had as much painful and horrified look as his bony face allowed him to show while covering something that clearly wasn't there anymore. He was so scared he couldn't even make a joke about it. Nami simply shrugged in response to her nakama's suffering. "Baka," muttered her over his poor choice of words, while the mysterious girl seemed to be having a difficult time choosing between laughing at this or pitying him. Curious, thought the navigator. Luffy was showing he clearly empathized with his nakama if his crouched form and pained look was anything to go by. Another minute or two passed before the cyborg could speak again and apologize to the crew's archaeologist, and once more they turned to face the girl with inquisitive eyes. "So," said Nami, waiting for the answer for her previous question. The girl took some time before she finally spoke. "Sorry, what was the question again?" asked her with a sheepish look. Nami sighed with hand on her forehead with the ghost of a headache already forming. "Who are you?" yelled her, quickly losing the last bit of patience she had. "Why did you call Robin mother, and why did you say Sanji is your father?" finished her, taking a deep breath to calm herself. "Oh," exclaimed the girl as understanding slowly spread across her features before a slight frown took its place. "What do you mean?" asked the girl, cocking her head to the side a bit. "Isn't he your father?" asked Usopp, just as confounded as Nami, his comrade on this interrogation. "Of course he isn't," said the young lady while laughing at the question as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. Zoro chuckled, seeing that shitty cook suddenly cried beside him, asking the heavens why they were so cruel to him. Nobody seemed to give him much attention despite his outburst. "My dad is." The young girl suddenly crouched, clutching her midsection with a pained moan. The crew instantly circled her, asking what was wrong, each with their own assumptions and discussing among themselves, while Chopper approached with care as he tried to talk to her when a loud growl caught their attention and they looked at her. "So hungry," weakly spoke her as if asking for treatment to a terrible disease. Flashback, and a large belch from Luffy broke the orange-haired woman's thoughts as she pushed her plate away from her, hunger the last thing on her mind. "So," started Nami, trying to get the girl's attention. "Who are you?" asked her for what felt like the umpteenth time that day. "Why do you continue asking me that? You already know who I am," said the young girl with a frustrated look. "All of you do." "Why are you acting so weird?" asked her, eyeing them carefully, studying each one with a more critical eye. "Talking about weird, what happened to all of you?" asked her, tilting her head to the side. Trading glances among themselves, Robin spoke. "What do you mean?" observing the young girl with much interest. "Well," she paused to look around the room. "You all look different," she simply stated. "Mother, even you. You look young." She stopped mid-sentence after seeing the look her mother was giving along with a thin smile. Raising her arms slowly, "You look much more beautiful than you normally do." Hee. Laughed the girl with a forced smile and cold sweat running down her back. Robin rested her face on her raised hand and said, "Oh, thank you," with a smile and a calm voice. "Even Dad looks different," she said, unknowingly gaining the attention of all in the room as she turned towards Luffy. "You don't even seem to have more than 20 years, commented her to him. "Oh, that's because I'm 20 years old," said Luffy, pointing to himself while laughing. "Ah, so that's why," said the girl, satisfied until, "Wait, what?" She turned and yelled at him. "How many years have you been the Straw Hat Pirates?" asked her with a startled look to Nami and the others. "Let's see. About 4 years," said Usopp as the young girl looked towards Zoro, the oldest crew member, for confirmation, which he gave with a small nod. "How is that possible?" said the girl to no one as one of her hands combed her hair while the other one held her hat, flinching slightly when she touched a sensitive spot, something that caught the attention of the crew's doctor. "Let me have a look, crouch down a little," said Chopper once close to the girl. She complied without any indication of having actually heard him, but did so anyway. While Chopper examined her, Nami tried to make sense of her sudden outburst. "Why does it matter how long we have been a crew?" wondered her as she felt more stress build along with frustration as questions continued to pile one after another. Robin felt that the mystery surrounding the mysterious girl only seemed to get thicker the more they learned about her, and this frustrated even her, the calmest and most level-headed of the crew. After Chopper finished his checkup and said that she only seemed to have a small injury to the head that he had neglected to see before because of her hat, the girl seemed to leave her daze. "So you guys are on the new world, right? You already left Fishman Island, right?" asked her with her head still looking down. All of them were curious as to why she asked such strange question. "Yeah, quite a while ago. Wikoshi didn't stop crying, but the food was delicious," said the captain nonchalantly, seemingly without a care. "Oh, even Shirahoshi's crying face was lovely," said an enamored cook with hearts for eyes in his own little world. "Anyway, why do you ask?" asked Zoro, speaking with her for the first time before losing his patience. "Shut up, you shitty cook. I'm trying to talk here," yelled the green-haired man at his nakama. Wanna fight, Marimo?" asked an irate Sanji to a pissed-off Zoro, locking in a stare-off before both being punched by Nami. To situate myself. This response earned more than a few curious glances her way. "If I'm correct, then I'm in the past," she said, looking around the room. "The past?" thought Robin. "Is she implying what I think she is?" wondered her as she observed her nakama's confused stares all go back to the girl after silently ask one another what she meant. "What do you mean by that?" asked her, hoping to possibly answer her own questions. "Well, I said the past, but it's really your present and maybe LSO my past, though since I'm here I'm guessing it's also my present as well now," explained the mysterious girl, her tone becoming more uncertain, almost a question by the end of the explanation, as she stopped to put a hand to her chin with a thoughtful expression and her head tilted slightly. That did very little to reduce the confusion on their minds and faces as the girl suddenly faced them. "Do you have a newspaper around? Preferably a recent one?" asked her with the same thoughtful expression. "Here," said Frankie as he handed her the paper article, all the while watching as she snapped from his giant hands and quickly paged through it until a look of realization and understanding graced her features instead of the one of concentration she had while reading it. "I see. I was right," murmured her in a voice barely above a whisper. "Interesting," she finally said with a bright smile. While looking at the crew, she wondered if their faces had become permanently stuck with those curious semi-confused expressions they were showing to her. Coughing in her hand, she began, "Now I think I understand the situation a little better," she said with a proud look. When she didn't elaborate, "Good. Would you mind sharing with the rest of us?" asked Usopp, frustrated, unsure of what she was going to say now. "Oh, of course," replied the mysterious girl with a bashful look. After recomposing herself, she began, "As I said before, to me you all look different and were supposed to know me, right?" she asked, waiting to see if they were following her line of thought. After a series of nods, she continued, "Well, the reason you don't is because I'm not yet born," she concluded, crossing her arms over her chest, feeling triumphant. After a few moments of weird, uncomfortable silence, Usopp raised his hand and after a short yes from the girl, he said, "Are you crazy?" with a look that clearly showed that he doubted her sanity. She sighed in frustration before speaking again. "I am from the future," she said in a matter-of-fact, "this is the truth," deal with a tone that left no room for argument. If she thought before he seemed incredulous and confused, now he was downright declaring her mad with his eyes. "Okay, you had your fun," began Nami, growing more impatient by the minute. "Who are you and where are you from, really?" she said in her most stern tone, clearly tired of this girl's little game. "I already told you," screamed the furious young girl, throwing her hands to the air, startling Nami. "I'm Sonia, daughter of Monkey D. Luffy and Nico Robin." Robin's attention perked at the mention of that name. "And I came from the future," she shouted, miffed at their lack of faith. "You didn't say that before," simply said Frankie after an uneasy silence while she stared at Nami, daring her to contradict what she said. Turning to him with a surprised look, she said, "Oh, I didn't, ops, sorry." She apologized to the older man while scratching the back of her head, laughing nervously. "Oh come on," said Nami, already exasperated with her antics. "It's true." Sonia all but growled before putting her hand inside her pocket. "Here, I'll prove it." She threw the newspaper on the table and quickly hunched above it for a few minutes before standing up and showing her handiwork to the crew. They huddled close to see what she meant. It was nothing more than strange letters and strange symbols that, even though seemed familiar to some, none of them could understand it, except for one. Gasping loudly, Robin grabbed the newspaper with wide eyes that shifted between the girl and the words she had written. "What's it, Robin?" asked Nami, quite concerned by her female friend's reaction. "This is the ancient language of the poneglyphs," she said with a voice filled with mixed emotions. "Who taught you this?" she asked Sonia with a frantic look. Her brain working a mile a minute, coming up with theories. Is she another survivor? No, she's too young. Someone else knew it. No, they would be dead. So how? As her mind continued to create more and more possible scenarios, all of them unlikely, she almost missed the girl's answer. "You did, mother," was her response, along with a reassuring smile to her mother as she calmly walked towards her and enveloped her in a warm hug, attempting to calm the older woman. "I did?" That thought stumped her for a few moments. Could she be telling the truth? She wondered, feeling too many conflicting feelings. She almost didn't even notice her arms starting to move to return the hug, but she hesitated once she did. She felt that the girl spoke the truth, or at least a part of her did, but she could not help feeling somewhat frightened by those strange feelings that had been evoked by her since her arrival. Stepping away from her, she could see a slightly hurt look on her eyes for a second before she began to smile again. "I bet Dad knows I'm telling the truth," said the girl, now hugging Luffy. It took only a second before Luffy patted her head and with his infamous grin said, "Yeah, she is. She," laughed Luffy, facing his crew. "Come on, Luffy, how do you know? She might be lying or trying to trick us," reasoned his long-nosed friend, trying to make his captain think for once. "Nope, she's telling the truth," said him with all the confidence of the world, while Usopp asked how did he knew. "Because the mysterious feeling doesn't lie," said him with a hand on his chest, his grin never changing even after Usopp sighed in defeat at his cryptic remark. "I give up," he said, too tired after all the confusion he has experienced so far, and thought that it would only be more troublesome to continue to fight it. "So, how old are you anyway, Sonia-chan?" asked him, resigned to accept his captain's wishes. "I'm 15, said her rather proudly, thumping her chest. A scream surprised everyone as one fuming Sanji grabbed Luffy by his vest close to him. "How could you taint Robin Schwann's honor?" yelled an angry Sanji with fire in his visible eye through clenched teeth. "Technically, if she's telling the truth, he hasn't done anything to taint her honor yet," pointed out Usopp while trying to grasp the concept of time travel and its implications. "And worst of all," continued Sanji, clearly ignoring the long-nosed man, "you have such a beautiful daughter with her. You bastard," screamed him with tears of envy flowing down his face, while Luffy laughed at his outburst, clearly enjoying himself. "That doesn't even make sense, you idiot," said Nami with a swift chop to the head. "Luffy, are you really going to trust her?" asked his navigator in a hushed tone after throwing the cook to the side. "She could be dangerous," she added, hoping he would understand her concerns. "Don't worry," said him with his straw hat shadowing his eyes, but his voice was familiar to her. It was the tone he used only with his nakama. "I believe in her, she's my daughter." His tone left no room for argument. Reluctantly, she stood by his side and watched as the crew asked many questions about the future. Like always, the strange and impossible seemed to find them again, and her. Robin and maybe Usopp were the only ones normal enough to notice it and be wary of it. At least that is what she thought. She narrowed her eyes at the young girl as she hugged Chopper, shouting about how cute he was. She would keep an eye on her. She would find out the truth about her. There's no way she was Luffy's daughter with Robin. Thought her with conviction, without realizing her fist trembling slightly or feel her nails digging onto her hand. Chapter 3: Mysterious Questions. "Let go of me. Let go," screamed the frantic reindeer as he struggled against his captor, that continued to squeeze and nuzzle him despite his cries of protest. As soon as his captor let go of him, he quickly ran to the side of his cyborg friend. "I'm not cute," shouted Chopper while hiding behind Frankie, the wrong way, trying his best to glare angrily at his former captor. Trying her best not to giggle at how cute she thought his glare and angry face were, Sonia said, "Of course not. I meant to say how handsome you are." She complimented the young reindeer while apologizing with a playful smile. Seeing some reaction to the compliment, she continued, "Don't you agree, mother?" asked the young girl, turning towards Nico Robin with an expectant smile. Glancing discreetly between the girl and the small doctor, she answered, "Of course, and I also think he's quite dashing as well," she said with her usual smile while keeping an eye for what she knew was about to happen. "That doesn't make me happy at all, you bastards," said a blushing Chopper with an expression both happy and embarrassed. While the group surrounding the blushing reindeer laughed and chuckled amusedly at his typical reaction and contradictory response, Nami watched Sonia trying to figure out the truth behind the mysterious girl's origins. From what she has seen so far, Nami concluded that she seemed to know their doctor's habit of cursing when embarrassed, since she apparently was expecting it, and the way she acted with so much familiarity with the others bothered her too. She knew more than she was letting on, of that Nami was sure, and unknowingly to her she was not the only one to think so. While Sonia laughed, Usopp watched her with a pensive look, his eyebrows furrowed in concentration at something that only he seemed to know. Once her laughter began calming down, he spoke. "Sonia-chan, you said you were from the future, right?" asked the long-nosed man with a neutral look as he waited for her to nod in confirmation, clearly annoyed at his lack of faith in her words or her story. Which of them was he didn't know? "So that means you know is from the future, right?" asked him with a small hint of interest in his voice that managed to bypass through the impassive mask he was trying to maintain. She responded with another nod to his question, but now seemed to be much more interested in the man's line of thought. "So how are we on the future?" hesitantly started the sharpshooter, holding his curiosity at bay as best he could, but once he saw her confused look he quickly elaborated. "I mean, are we stronger? How are we there? Are we cooler? Am I a brave warrior of the sea?" Usopp asked the last question with a more serious and urgent tone before quickly adding, "I mean, an even braver warrior of the seas." But soon, with a growing anxiety at her possible answers, he continued making question after question so fast that she didn't even have time to answer any of them properly. Until he stopped mid-question before anyone could tell him to slow down. His posture started to become more serious, the air around him tense, the room being filled only by the silence of his comrades that were now observing their long-nosed nakama, clearly interested at his sudden change in demeanor. He took one deep breath to steel himself to the possible answer to the question he was about to ask, all eyes on him, clearly curious and sure that whatever his next question would be, it was important to him. Gulping, he stared directly into the young girl's eyes as he began to speak, and about the One Piece. "Usopp!" yelled a furious Luffy, interrupting the sharpshooter, which jumped in surprise and landed on his butt, and at the same time startling the rest of the crew. He fixed an angry glare completely focused on the young man on the floor. Raising from his seat, the tension in the room began to rapidly escalate, while the crew couldn't help but feel a certain sense of déjà vu and remember a similar situation that had happened in the past, and all began to worry and sweat nervously at what their captain intended to do, but none looked more worried and scared than Usopp. While thinking on how to defuse the situation, the crew almost didn't notice the young girl step between their captain and their sniper. "Dad, calm down," said the young girl in a calm and casual voice as she became the focus of all in the room that watched her while holding their breaths. "I'm not going to say anything about it. After all, where's the fun in that?" she commented while giving a small smirk towards Usopp. "It has to be an adventure, right?" she asked with a wide smile that reminds the crew of Luffy's grin. "That's right," Luffy said with a matching grin and much more enthusiasm as he returned to his seat, acting like nothing happened. As the crew sighed in relief, Usopp remained stunned for a second before quickly getting up. "That's right, an adventure," he exclaimed. "I don't want to hear nothing more about the future. In fact, I'll die if I hear anything about the future disease." As Sonia and Luffy laughed at the clearly made-up disease, the rest of the crew relaxed and began to approach the girl with some questions of their own, except for Nami, whom seemed to have a thoughtful look. But soon after they began to make their questions known, Nami quickly stopped them. "Wait, there's something I want to check before anyone else makes any more questions," she said to her nakama before facing the young girl. "Since you're from the future, if you're telling the truth," began the navigator, ignoring the annoyed humph at her comment, "then you know when certain things will happen and how they'll end, right?" she asked the girl that nodded with a blank look. "So, is it really okay for you to be telling us about the future?" finished her with her brows furrowed in concern. "What do you mean, Nami Swan?" asked Sanji while lighting a new cigarette. "I mean, what if by her giving us information about the future she somehow changes it?" explained the orange-haired woman before sighing at the lost looks she received from her nakama. "For example, what if she tell us about a big battle before it happens or how to quickly win it?" Looking around to make sure she had their full attention, she continued, "Things that we would have done, aren't done. And things that shouldn't happen may happen as a result. It wouldn't be too far-fetched to say that it may result in our deaths in the end," said Nami in a serious and somber tone. "Ah, the future is scary," screamed a teary-eyed Chopper clinging to a shaking Usopp, Nami's implications clearly affecting them. "BB, but if that was true then Sonia-chan would know, right?" said the scared sharpshooter, looking at the young girl with a hopeful expression, eyes begging her to tell him his fears were unfounded. Cocking her head slightly with a hand on her chin and lightly biting her lower lip, she seemed to become lost in her thoughts for a few seconds, but for the fear-filled sniper and doctor were agonizing minutes, to say the least. Slowly she started, "I don't think that's a problem," said the girl as her audience began to gain relieved expressions. "Right?" she asked, turning the navigator beside her while scratching her head with a bashful look. "How the hell should I know?" screamed Nami at the top of her lungs at the young girl while Usopp and Chopper began to chant about how frightening the future was while Usopp rocked them back and forth on the floor. "I'm surrounded by idiots," muttered Nami under her breath before she spoke loud to catch the attention of the crew. "Okay, that's enough for now. Let's leave this place before we have any more problems, she instructed, glancing quickly to Sonia. I don't think I can handle anymore, she thought to herself as she left the room. As the rest of her nakama began to stand and follow her to the deck, Usopp could be seen getting up slowly behind them with a frustrated look featured on his face as he clenched his teeth and fists, trembling slightly. How could I be so stupid as to make it? Usopp chastised himself on his thoughts. How can I become a brave warrior of the sea if I continue to make the same mistakes? As he continued to doubt himself, he almost didn't notice the light tap on his shoulder. Once out of his dark thoughts about his shortcomings, he turned to see young Sonia staring at him with a calm and comforting gaze. If it means anything, to me you always were a brave warrior of the sea, she said with a warm smile. A smile began to grow on his face as he stood proud again. Ha ha ha, but of course you did. After all, I am the great Captain Usopp, brave warrior of the sea, bellowed the long-nosed man with his usual bravado and head held high. That was easily ignored by his friends heading for the door. But honestly, thank you, he whispered in a voice filled with sincerity and gratitude while using his arm to stealthily clear any manly moisture out of his eyes before he ran towards the door. As he passed her, he missed the knowing smiles of the young girl and a very observant archaeologist that followed him towards the open deck. XXXXXXXXXXXXX under the warm rays of the sun that bathes the sea and the pirate ship that leisurely sailed through its calm waves. 5 figures could be seen aboard the ship. A straw hat wearing young man sitting on the figurehead of the ship, looking straight forward to the sea in front of him and whatever lies beyond it. Another figure that could be seen close to him was that of a blond man at the helm of the ship, calmly smoking as he made light adjustments to the ship's course when necessary. A third figure could be found laying down on the grass of the deck, peacefully snoring without a care in the world. The fourth was different from the others. It was a female one that was sitting in a chair with a book in hand and a beautiful drink, carefully made by the cook at the helm, beside her. The last figure was much thinner and was nervously watching his surroundings as he turned the handle of a door and entered the room that lay beyond it. The room was dark, and as he entered, quickly he was pulled towards someone. Is it safe? Asked the mysterious person before a small lamp was lit and the small gathering that awaited him was slowly revealed. Yes, it is. Luffy-san is on his seat, Sanji-san is at the helm, Zoro-san is sleeping and Robin-san is reading a book, responded the thin figure as the small light illuminated his bony features. Good, good, answered the long-nosed man in front of him with his arms crossed. So anyone saw that coming? I mean, can you believe it? Questioned the sniper, showing his clear disbelief to the ones around him. Robin and Luffy. Together. He quietly yelled, almost as if it was a bad joke, receiving nods of agreement of varying degrees. Indeed, I was super surprised, exclaimed the cyborg in his usual pose before being quickly shushed by the sharpshooter telling him to be quiet. Me too. When she called Robin Mom, I couldn't believe my ears, spoke a nodding Brook, even though I don't have ears anymore. Yo-ho-ho, joked the laughing skeleton before his long-nosed friend tried to shush him too. Sighing in defeat, giving up on trying to silence his noisy nakama. And I don't think we're the only ones. Do you think she's telling the truth? After all, we're talking about Robin and Luffy, commented Usopp before he felt some light tugging on his pants. Looking down, he saw the youngest member of the group gazing at him with wide eyes. Why is it so difficult? Would it be bad if they were mates? Asked the young reindeer with all the innocence that only a child could muster, managing to both make the men in the group become quiet and put them in an uncomfortable position when under such a pure gaze. As the silence extended, the older men felt uncomfortable and unsure on how to proceed, but the young doctor seemed unaffected by the situation he created. After all, if they are both in heat, they could mate, right? Asked the young reindeer, studying his nakama. In heat? Thought all of the older males while exchanging glances between one another before turning to their friend that remained silent, awaiting for their answer. Looking at one another once more, they began a wordless discussion between themselves, where one turned to another with a heated glare or a hesitant expression as they faced the unexpected problem that their doctor had brought upon them. After a few minutes of this, Usopp finally relented as he crouched close to Chopper and led him away from the other adults as he began to try to explain to the impressionable reindeer the intricacy of human courtship and so on, as had been decided in the silent conversation that had taken place moments before, since he was the most normal and least perverted among the group there and therefore the most suited to explain such things to Chopper. After uncomfortable talk and a few questions and answers later, the human and reindeer returned to their places close to the awaiting cyborg and skeleton. Usopp tried to regain his composure and Chopper kept taking deep breaths while trying to stop blushing. Brook chuckled at their nakama innocent behavior while Frankie tried to help Usopp relax. Okay, I think I understand things a little better, began Chopper after another deep breath. But still, why would it be so strange if Robin and Luffy were together? Asked him once more. It's because they are so different, simply said Usopp, explaining what he believed to be most obvious reason. I mean, she's so calm and intelligent while he's so immature and idiotic and crazy. But it is not like they don't share certain qualities. Brook interrupted as he pointed out their similarities after he had their attention. They are both incredibly loyal and stubborn about how to do so, Remember Eni's lobby? The mentioned event brought unpleasant memories to the ones involved, before a cough from his non-existent throat caught their attention again. Anyway, they certainly care a lot about their nakamas and are skilled fighters, in their own way. But you can't forget she is much OL. Frankie quickly stopped as a cold chill ran down his spine, making him look at his surroundings with worry. Luffy is so childish while Robin is much more, refined and cultured. Frankie rapidly added the compliments. A few moments of silence later Usopp added, still, Brook does make a good point, they do have some things that are alike. His hand scratched his chin as this new tangent of conversation showed new possibilities worth considering. We can't forget that she seems to be the only one that can handle his crazy antics and laugh at his dangerous behavior and selfish decisions, said the skeleton gentleman, continuing to express his opinion. You got that right, she even seems to like it, exclaimed the cyborg as he smirked, and she also seemed to be the only one that can understand or follow his strange logic, at least a part of it. I think, finished the giant man as he wondered whether she truly understood their captain's mind or if she was just going along with his decisions to see how things would play out. I guess you're right, agreed the long-nosed liar of the group. Maybe she could be able to handle him, maybe even stop him from doing stupid things, he said as a smile began to grow at the possibility of less crazy adventures. Or at least make them less frequent. He finished realizing that was probably just wishful thinking. So does that mean Robin would be a good mate for Luffy? Asked Chopper with a hopeful expression and wide eyes. Well, she certainly is better than someone that acts like him, quipped Frankie. Can you imagine a female Luffy and what they would do together? Said the cyborg with a slight chuckle before the thought began to take form in their minds. The image of a grinning young girl wearing a straw hat and a pink vest began to form on their mind's eye, and it continued to show how her interactions with their captain would be. They could see Luffy and the grinning young girl jumping side by side on the deck, yelling about adventure as the ship got near. NLD selfishly make random decisions that would endanger the crew. How they would whine whenever they got bored, and possibly worst of all, how they would eat so much that the crew would starve to death. Oh, and let's not forget all of the idiotic and dangerous things that a second Luffy would bring. They were sure that their nakama wouldn't survive that, nobody could. A shiver ran down the spines as cold sweat began to pour down their necks. Usopp was shaking furiously just at the thought of another monstrous glutton. Please don't even joke about it, pleaded him to his nakama while trying to forget the horrifying image that had just mentally scarred him, silently prying for protection against such fate. Yo-ho-ho-ho. Awkwardly laughed a shivering skeleton as he tried to get up from the fetal position that he had found himself after the terrifying idea of a second Luffy had presented itself to him. The crew might love their captain and trust him with their lives, but nobody denied he was quite difficult to handle, to say the least. Forget I said that, quickly said Frankie after seeing how his words affected his nakama. Even Chopper seemed scared of the idea. Robin and Luffy would make a good couple, he concluded while trying to turn the conversation to the previous topic. And it wouldn't be that strange if they got together. After all, you know what people say about opposites and how they attract each other. Yo-ho-ho, the musician agreed with a bony smile and his familiar laugh. As the group continued to discuss how their captain's hypothetical relationship with their archaeologist might change their captain and affect the rest of the crew, the pros and cons of their possible or likely relationship, the pros began to crush the cons. Maybe you're right and they would be a good couple. If she can change him even one bit, then that is already a big improvement, said the long-nosed man as he began to accept the possibility. Well, she certainly is nicer than Nami-san too. Yo-ho-ho-ho, commented the oldest with a tone that made difficult to discern the true nature of his comment. While the others expressed their agreements along with a few other commentaries, none noticed Usopp snapping his head to the side. What was that? He thought as he searched the darkness that surrounded them. Did you guys hear that? He quietly asked his friends. All of them shook their heads and asked what was the problem. He looked to the side one more time before speaking again. It's nothing, he concluded with an unsure sigh. After a few more moments he resumed his part of the conversation. Anyway, the most difficult part about all of that is to imagine Luffy entering or even understanding how a relationship works. His skeleton and cyborg friend both agreed with him on that, while their furry friend seemed unsure on what he meant. I didn't even know he had any interest that. Ha ha ha. The young man joked with a smile, and soon his friends joined him. Their talk continued for a minute or two before the loud shout of their navigator caught their attention, calling the crew and telling them to assemble on the deck. The group ran towards the door and soon left the confines of the dark room, but none noticed the flower petals that were blown when the door was opened. The crew began to assemble on the grassy deck as their navigator began to talk. "Okay. Now Luffy will choose what course we'll take," announced the orange-haired navigator while scanning the group present. Once he was close enough, Usopp displayed his confusion as he glanced at his nakama. "So," he began slowly, "why did you call us?" he asked while scratching his head. "We don't need to be here for that, right? Luffy will choose to do whatever he wants anyway," he commented while looking at the approaching captain and receiving nods of agreement from a few of his crewmates. "Ooh," began Nami calmly walking towards Usopp. "I just thought I would be nice and call everyone to participate and know what his decision was," she said with a smile that revealed nothing and yet it frightened him for some reason. Oh, is that so? You were just being nice," stuttered the long-nosed man with a lump in his throat as he continued to feel pressure coming from the smiling she-devil he faced. "Thank you for always being so nice," he said with a forced smile. "No problem," answered Nami as she turned towards Luffy, sparing one last glance to the rest of the crew. "So we're to now, Luffy?" asked the navigator. Luffy leaned over the log pose and watched the needle's movement. "This one," decided the rubber man as he pointed at one needle at random. "Okay," the navigator said before walking towards the helm of the ship, to change the course once more, completely ignoring the rest of the crew. That was strange, thought Usopp while wondering what that was about, and while he wasn't the only one that thought that, nobody seemed keen on the idea of questioning Nami. Shrugging the strange moment aside, the group began to disperse. Luffy began to pester Sanji for food while the cook refused to comply with their captain's wishes. The group's swordsman began his search for his ways, feeling like it was a good day to train outside, while Brook began to tune his guitar beside Robin that was returning to the pages of the book she had been reading. Chopper asked Sonya to accompany him for another checkup just to be sure that she was fine, which she complied, but not before she told her mother where she was going with an innocent and carefree smile and a loud voice. As each member of the Straw Hat crew continued to find ways to entertain themselves, Sonya's voice traveled across the deck as Nami's knuckles turned white as her grip of the helm became tighter. "I'll find out who you really are," whispered Nami while she stole a furtive glance towards Sonya with determined eyes and a thin smirk.